Thank you very much for the thoughts you shared with us this morning.
You're very welcome.
A couple of follow-up questions for you. The public sector has a reputation externally for not housing rebels and encouraging rebels. Sometimes when we work on the inside, we see people pushing the boundaries constantly and delivering a huge amount of change. Is the perception that the public sector doesn't have rebels more or less valid than it used to be?
I think it's less valid than it used to be. There are certainly people who push against the limitations of what the public service is comfortable with from within their organisations. And often they're extremely good at it. It's learning to play the game of bureaucracy for lots of those sorts of people that will help them not get frustrated at work. And so finding your niche and finding where it is that you can push. There's a term that people that I work with are familiar with, which is intrapreneur, an entrepreneur on the inside. And if you can be seen as that rather than as someone who's causing upset, that's often beneficial.
Become an entrepreneur. And if thinking about the skills or behaviours or skill set or practices that one would want to have at a macro level, thinking about EQ or about energy or about other things, for somebody to be an entrepreneur in the public service, what are some of the behaviours that they might have to excel in or benefit from excelling in?
Sure. Having a high EQ is actually really, really important. It's easy to get frustrated with the organisation or with the people around you when they don't see things the way you see them. And so it's not simply an entrepreneurial trait. So learning to understand how people work is incredibly important. Learning to look for, in all the ideas that someone like this will always generate, learning to look for the ones that are going to have value for the people that you're working with, so that you can sell is the wrong word, but it's also the right word, so you can sell the ideas for the changes that you think are valuable and appropriate. Being a person that can read people and being a person that can articulate well what it is that you think needs transformation, whether that's tiny or whether that's large, is really, really important.
Interesting. I heard the Secretary of Health and Ageing, Jane Halton, recently say, and these are my words, so I might misquote her here, for which I apologise, but say something to the effect of, the reason they have so many change initiatives happening is because they know the world is changing fast. They can't afford to wait to see where it gets to, so that they always pick the right path. So they've got to make their best effort to choose the right path and move as quickly as they can in that direction to keep ahead or to keep up. And I was wondering, in the public sector, is the lag less than it used to be? How much is the lag between the world, where the world's going, and how the public service is bringing Australia with it?
I think that's situationally dependent. There's some change that the public sector has been extremely good at managing. And we're doing fantastic things. The public sector, because I'm not in the public sector, but the public sector is doing fantastic things around delivering services out to, in our social sector and those sorts of things, delivering job services. The public sector has been less good at coping with things like the move of society online and how to deal with that and how to interact in a way that, from a communications perspective, is not profoundly different to what's always been done in focus groups and those sort of things, but looks from the outside to be remarkably different. The tools and the technology and the methodologies are different. One thing that I think the public service, and it's not just the public service, it's business as well, suffers from is in not engaging enough with the design thinkers and the synthesizers and those sorts of people within their organisations. Is to borrow a sporting analogy, they don't skate to where the puck's going to be often enough. They see how the game is flowing and they engage in the game, and then something unusual happens and they don't have the player to be where the puck is going to be. They have the players who are good journeymen.
Interesting. So more rebels required.
In the right places.
In the right places.
In the right places. Because you can't employ just rebels.
Sure. Final two questions, education related. In your role, your life as an educator, the second one's to do more with tertiary education, but the first one I'm just interested in your reflections. It's a primary education thing. In the old days, children had to learn handwriting because handwriting was something that adults needed as a skill. Today, children learn handwriting because it's something kids have to do. And when they finish at school, they don't need to do it anymore. And I'm just wondering, is the curriculum, both at primary and at tertiary level, is the education, are our curriculae keeping up and adjusting? Is that lag happening? Are we skating to the puck, where the puck's going to be?
I think we're struggling there too. And overall, we're doing generally well. Australia's a fantastic education system. And my kid is in it, and she's doing reasonably well. But there are things that she is taught and there are things that she has been taught in her years at school that I scratch my head about. The thing that I would love to see our education system focus more on is teaching contextualisation rather than fact. The reality is that finding and engaging and learning facts, which was the heart of my learning, is actually now a trivial exercise. You can go online and you can find a fact reliably sourced about pretty much any historical incident or pretty much any mathematical need. But it's understanding our place in the world or understanding why it is, for example, that Australia engaged in the First World War, which was very remote from us geographically, and understanding our place in history, for example. Understanding why we explore, understanding why people like Stephen Hawking think like he does. That, I think, is a much, much needed skill.
Thank you. And the last then, on a similar theme, the science of social networking is, as a science, is more than 100 years old now, and of course is core to human culture and society. The science of social networking today tends to refer to virtual networking or non-face-to-face online networking. And I'm wondering, is face-to-face networking a competency that, say, your university students or secondary school students today are underdeveloping because online networking is supplanting what was face-to-face, or is the whole human capacity to network and interact with each other a much more increasing thing, including face-to-face networking? Is it sustaining its own life as a competency?
Those human skills, the capacity to communicate with another human, as you say, it's not new. It's a little frustrating, even though a lot of my work is based in this, that people think social network and then they automatically think online. The need to do things like public engagement and the need to do things like understand the users of the service that you provide or the program or policy that you're delivering absolutely relies on you being able to have a conversation with an individual. Now, if that's online, that's fantastic. If it's offline, it's no less valuable. So teaching people skills, even for the introverts as well as the extroverts. The extroverts need to learn to wind back a little bit. The introverts need to learn to come up a little bit. That's, I think, again, a fundamental skill. And people's skills are hard. I mean, I struggle with them. I'm inclined to introversion, but I cope.
Well, maybe as a final comment reflecting on that, the new face-to-face with the national broadband network and bandwidth and internet speeds increasing the way they are, the new face-to-face networking is online face-to-face video networking.
Potentially, yeah, absolutely. And that won't necessarily be a bad thing. If it's easy to have a conversation with your remote relatives or your remote co-worker via video, but it's so good that it's almost as good as being in the room, that's potentially a good thing. We'll be less inclined to fire off emotional missives by email.
Wonderful future. Thank you very, very much for your contribution today, Stephen, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.